You are lying. Not to other people, though you do that too. You are lying to yourself. Every single day you walk into rooms as a version of yourself that has been carefully edited, carefully managed, carefully constructed to be acceptable. And somewhere underneath all of that editing, underneath the agreeable person, the competent person, the person who has it together, there is someone you have not shown anyone in a very long time. Maybe ever. And the exhausting part is not the pretending. The exhausting part is that you have been doing it for so long that you have started to forget that there is a difference. This video is about that difference. And by the end of it you are going to understand exactly why you constructed the version of yourself you show the world, what it cost you to build it, what it is costing you to maintain it, and what becomes possible the moment you decide to stop. There was a specific moment, you probably do not remember it because you were too young, when you learned that your unedited self was not entirely welcome. It was not a dramatic moment. It probably did not look like trauma from the outside. It looked like a parent's expression changing when you said the wrong thing. It looked like being told to stop crying because it was making everyone uncomfortable. It looked like the enthusiasm that got called too much. The neediness that got called clingy. The anger that got punished. The sensitivity that got labeled as weakness. None of this required a cruel family. Even the most loving families send these messages, because families are made of imperfect human beings who were themselves taught to edit, who themselves learned which parts of them were welcome and which were not. What happened to you happens to almost everyone. The specific content differs. The mechanism is identical. You presented your authentic self. The environment responded with something less than full acceptance. And you, whose survival at that age depended on belonging to that environment, made a decision that was genuinely intelligent for a child and genuinely costly for the adult you became. You learned to edit. You learned to lead with the parts of yourself that were welcomed and hide the parts that were not. And the mask, the performed, curated, acceptable version of you, began. Most people who wear significant masks know something is wrong. They feel it as a vague, persistent exhaustion that does not go away no matter how much they sleep. They feel it as a sense that something is missing even when their life looks fine from the outside. They feel it as loneliness inside relationships that should not feel lonely. What they rarely identify is the specific source of these feelings, because the source is not a thing that happened to them. It is something they are doing. Continuously. In every social interaction. In every room they enter. The mask costs energy, enormous, constant, unacknowledged energy, because performing a self that is different from your actual self requires permanent vigilance. Monitoring what you say. Adjusting your reactions before they land. Suppressing authentic responses and replacing them with appropriate ones. All of this is happening beneath the surface of every conversation you have ever had while wearing it. And beyond the energy cost, there is something deeper and more damaging. When you spend enough time performing a version of yourself, when the mask becomes your default operating mode, you begin to lose contact with what is underneath it. You stop knowing what you actually think before you have edited it. You stop knowing what you actually feel before you have managed it. You become genuinely uncertain about who you are beneath the performance. And that uncertainty, that estrangement from your own inner life, is one of the loneliest places a human being can inhabit. Not because no one is around you, but because you are not around you. Here is the thing nobody tells you about masks. Once you have worn one long enough, it stops feeling like a mask. It starts feeling like your face. And taking off your face does not feel like authenticity. It feels like exposure. Like walking into a room with no skin. Your nervous system, which has been running the mask program since childhood, does not distinguish between the original environment where the hiding was necessary and the current environment where it may not be. It only knows that the last time certain parts of you were fully visible, something painful happened. And it is not interested in updating that assessment just because you are now an adult in a different situation with different people. So every time something moves toward genuine self-revelation, every time a conversation gets close to something real, every time someone asks a question that would require an honest answer, the alarm fires. And you feel it as anxiety, as deflection, as the urge to change the subject or make a joke or give the safe answer instead of the true one. You tell yourself you are being appropriate. You tell yourself it is not the right moment. You tell yourself these people would not understand. And sometimes that is true. But mostly it is your nervous system protecting you from a threat that stopped being real a long time ago. The problem is not that you cannot take the mask off. The problem is that your body genuinely believes you cannot afford to. There is a specific progression that happens with long-term mask wearing that almost nobody talks about. The mask begins as a choice, even if a choice made unconsciously, even if a choice made at 5 years old. But over time it stops being a choice. It becomes compulsory. You wear it not because you have decided to, but because you no longer know how not to. And this is when the mask becomes a prison. Not a prison with visible bars. A prison that looks like a perfectly normal life. That looks like a social person who gets along with everyone. That looks like a professional who handles things well. That looks like someone who seems fine. The bars of this prison are specific. The inability to say what you actually think even when the room would receive it. The compulsion to manage other people's perceptions of you even when no real threat is present. The inability to rest, to ever be fully at ease, fully off, fully yourself, because the performance has become so automatic it runs even when there is no audience. The specific exhaustion that comes not from what you are doing but from who you are being. From the sustained, unacknowledged effort of being anyone other than exactly who you are. Every single day. Without rest. Without relief. Without anyone knowing why you are tired because the thing making you tired is invisible. Underneath every mask, however thick, however long worn, however completely it has merged with your sense of self, there is a real person. Not a perfect person. Not a person who has everything figured out. A person with genuine opinions that formed before you had time to edit them. Genuine emotional responses that arrived before you had time to manage them. Genuine desires, genuine fears, genuine ways of seeing the world that belong only to you and to nobody else. You have met this person. You meet them in the moments of genuine laughter that you did not plan. In the opinions that slip out before you can stop them. In the things that move you unexpectedly, the beauty or the sadness or the truth of something that catches you before your defenses arrive. In the anger that rises when something violates something you hold deeply, before the training kicks in to suppress it. These are not accidents. These are not lapses. These are the actual you, the one who has been present this entire time, underneath everything that has been laid over it, showing up in the unguarded moments, waiting with extraordinary patience for a life in which simply being yourself is not a risk you cannot afford to take. Living without the mask, or with a significantly lighter one, does not mean sharing everything with everyone. It does not mean performing radical authenticity as its own kind of performance. What it means is that the choices about what to share and what to keep private are made from genuine choice rather than from fear. This distinction, between privacy chosen freely and hiding driven by fear, is the difference between a life that feels like yours and a life that feels like a role you were assigned. People who have done the real work of taking off their masks consistently describe the same things. A reduction in the baseline exhaustion that never seemed to have a source. A deepening of the relationships that could handle the real version of them and a natural falling away of the ones that could not. A quality of presence that was never available when so much of their energy was going into management. And most unexpectedly, the discovery that the version of them that was most afraid of being rejected is the version that is most genuinely loved. Because what people connect to in other people is never the performance. It is always the person underneath it. The performance may be impressive. But you cannot love a performance. You can only love a person. And people who have spent their lives performing have often never let themselves find out what it would feel like to simply be loved for exactly who they are. You built the mask for good reasons. In the environment where it was constructed, it was the intelligent response to the information you had. It kept you safe. It earned you belonging. It worked in the way that survival strategies work, which is to say it got you through. The question is not whether it was necessary then. The question is whether the cost of maintaining it now, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the estrangement from yourself, the life half lived behind glass is a cost you are still willing to pay. Because there is another option. Not a dramatic revelation. Not a sudden wholesale dropping of everything you have built. But a gradual, careful, courageous process of letting the real version of you take up slightly more space. In one conversation. With one person. In one moment of saying what you actually think instead of what you have calculated is safe. And then watching what happens. Most of the time what happens is not catastrophe. Most of the time what happens is connection. And each time that happens, each time you let something real out and the world does not end, the mask gets a little lighter. And you get a little more of your own life back. If this video helped you recognize something you have been carrying, subscribe right now. Every single week we go this deep into the psychology of what makes us human. The things most people feel but nobody explains honestly. Nobody is going this deep and you do not want to miss what is coming. Drop a comment below and tell me which version of yourself have you never shown anyone. You do not have to answer fully. Even one sentence. Because someone reading your comment right now needs to know they are not the only one. And next week, we are going somewhere that will stop you cold. The voice in your head that tells you that you are not enough, not smart enough, not good enough, not worthy enough, that voice is not yours. It was put there. And next week we are going to show you exactly who put it there.